mic check, please.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jennings.
I'm your host, Dr. Mike Brazier.
My name is John Gordon. I'll be your host.
And I'm your host, Katie Burke.
Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America. The DU podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, John Gordon, and I've got a special guest today, a gentleman I started working with, 2018, 2019, but we first met on a Ducks Unlimited television set, Beaver Dam Lake 2015, on a pretty cool episode that was a ladies' hunt, and it turned out really well. The weather worked out right. It's hard to make everything work out right sometimes, but it did in that particular episode. But Austin Brown, welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast.
Good to be here. I think the weather was a little extreme, it seemed like, too.
Well, it was. I remember very well that there was a major cold front coming in from the north right before that shoot was going to happen. That was it was early January, and the temperatures for North Mississippi were going to be more like Canada, really. So it was going to drop into the single digits. And with a lake like Beaver Dam, what you get is all the surrounding field areas that birds have been holding in and feeding in will freeze solid. And then what you get is a captive audience, so to speak. You know, if you've got open water, that's where they're all going to be. And that's what happened in that particular hunt. And y'all folks, you can check it out on the DU website. It's in the 2015 season. It was a really great show, but Austin, you and Richie filmed that, and that's the first time I'd ever met y'all. I wasn't working for Ducks Unlimited at the time. I was just helping the Boyds out. As a matter of fact, Michael Lamar Boyd, Beaver Dam Hunting Services, great host of that deal. Oh, let's see. Who was the cast of women? Let's see. Carrie Lingo. She was a Olympic gold medalist in field hockey.
Right.
And then we had Christine Thomas, a longtime DU board member from Wisconsin. Jan Young from California. And let's see. Ainsley Beeman hosted that show. And it was really cool. Folks, I can remember one thing that really stood out in my mind with Austin is it was really windy the first day, but that front was coming in, and it was blowing about 25. And the Boyd's blind there at Beaver Dam, it looks like a big beaver hut, more or less. But Austin got up on top of that blind and stayed up there the entire morning filming birds, and it was pretty special, man. We all thought you were going to freeze to death.
I remember just I don't even know, it was an inch or 2 inch thick ice we had to break in boats and kind of going out there. I was thinking in the dark, because you don't know that they've got a little bit of open water out front of the blinds. I was thinking, man, this is going to be a short hunt. And then we get out there, and I mean, we've got the perfect, 20 by 30 hole right in front of the blind. And like I was telling you, we had such a good hunt. I think they've just the past couple of years stopped using that actual footage from that hunt as far as for like intros and other things, because it was so, right in your face. I mean, and they run a great operation. I mean, that's like picture perfect, easy hunt, roll up to the blind. I mean, that's not something that you're used to hunting on public land. So it was pretty spectacular, to say the least.
Yeah, and that leads me into what I really want to talk about with you today is the real challenges of filming a waterfowl hunting TV show. I mean, I know you've done big game and other stuff. I mean, is there anything more challenging than doing waterfowl? I
mean, the thing with waterfowl, too, is a lot of things that people don't see is like just, normally, like me being a public land duck hunter in Arkansas, I know that there's challenges in itself just trying to get birds where you want them. But then, like, multiply that by like 3. You're hiding, 2 more guys, maybe 3 more guys, depending if you got a sound guy or whatever you're doing, and then trying to get the birds, 20 or 30 yards right in front of the camera, because like you mentioned earlier, if they're not on camera, then that one doesn't count. So that's the and then not to mention, I remember one of the first trips that I went to with John Paul Morris in North Dakota. Blizzard, snowy conditions, trying to keep camera gear dry. I mean, then we had to, this was a public land spot, so we had to walk in like a mile. So we're carrying, 30 or 40 extra pounds easy of camera gear, and you get out there, blizzard, and it's just, multiply however hard the hunt is by about 2 or 3, and then you're going to get let's film a show for DUTV. So that's how it usually works.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? That it's a lot more difficult and it's difficult as well. The fact that you're not just hunting 3 or 4 people, you've also got a cameraman inside the blind. You've got a guy outside the blind. So what are the real challenges of hiding from the birds?
Well, I mean, basically, before every hunt, we try to have the conference call and figure out a way that we're going to make this work, because if you've got like trees or stuff, it's usually easier to hide people. But if you get out in some of those fields, like in a Canada or something like that, now the A-frame invention of the blind has obviously made that a lot easier because you can drop somebody back. But before that, you're sitting on your back laying out there trying to hide 2 or 3 guys in layout blinds, and that's a nightmare. Nobody likes to sit on their back and film birds coming over your head. So that's definitely a major challenge of it.
Yeah, that's one that has been a big change, and it really has helped film television. To me, the A-frame style, where you've got the portable blinds, you can set up. You can also make it a little portable one-man blind, right, for the camera operator who's filming birds. And folks, that's how it works, okay? What you see is the final product. You see the birds coming in and the guys getting up and shooting, but it's 2 guys, right? And the one that really focuses on the waterfowl themselves, and somebody else is focusing on the conversations in the blind and the shooters. Folks, y'all have seen Austin's work quite a bit on DUTV if you're a fan. It's he does incredible work capturing those birds in flight. I mean, coming into the decoys, flying over. I mean, that's a challenge in itself.
Well, that's another thing too, as far as like you got to make sure the wind's right, but then also the sun's got to line up, because you can't be looking. That's a lot of, when you're hunting, usually you always want the sun at your back, but when you get when you're hunting with different, every time we go somewhere, it's a new different people that don't know how you hunt. So you got to line up the wind, line up the sun, and it's all it just all keeps going. And then, like you said, hiding people. That's usually the biggest challenge, I would say.
Another aspect that's really difficult. It's really challenging for waterfowl hunting. Any television show where you've got a lot of moving parts, and you've got people who got to take off work. You've got, maybe kids need to be out of school. Whatever is the fact that you've got to put these shows together and pick the date range you're going to film in April, July, August, and this is going to take place in January or December, and you have no idea what the weather conditions are going to be. Austin, give us a little example of how that can really change everything.
Oh yeah, weather's huge, and then like I said, the biggest part about even with the weather is just keeping all that camera gear. Like you got to have it almost in perfect condition, because you start burning through camera gear, it's going to get expensive quick. Last year, I know we went up to Maine. It may have been 2 years ago. And I just remember looking over at Guy. We're going out across this sound or whatever they call it up there. I'm not a big sea duck guy, but anyways, just the waves, all that saltwater spray going everywhere. It's raining. I look over there, and he's got like a camera. He's got his life jacket on and his coat draped over, several $1,000 camera, just trying to keep it dry. I mean, it's just stuff like that people don't really see behind the scenes. You can't really show it, but that's stuff that goes into making a show, is just keeping all that gear in perfect condition. I mean, it's a nightmare a lot of times. So
yeah, folks. I mean, because you're dealing sometimes with, like I said, with a lot of cold. You got extreme cold. It's too warm. I mean, it's raining. It's going to storm. It's snowing. I mean, because let's face it. I mean, outside of teal season and some of the early seasons, Canada and stuff like that, you're really dealing with weather that can change on a dime, just like it did that day at Beaver Dam, where it went from pretty typical lows in the 30s, 40s to low. That second morning was 8 degrees there in Tunica, Mississippi, which is really unseasonable weather. But it makes for great hunting a lot of times. I mean, down here in the South, we're really so weather dependent. It's you got to get those fresh pushes of birds.
Oh yeah, I always give Guy a hard time. Like, his go-to rental vehicle is a minivan, and so I've got videos of him. We'll be up in Canada, and he'll be just driving this minivan out across this field, like cutting over corn stalks, or where they've harvested or whatever. So, and that's the other thing you don't get to see is like in North Dakota last year, you got that thing stuck. I mean, here we are, because it was when we got to North Dakota, it was like sunny skies, supposed to be a perfect week. Well, day 2, pouring down rain. I mean, we're sitting there slipping and sliding. So it's just all this stuff you try to plan ahead, like you said, never gets planned accordingly. So you just got to go with what it is.
Guy does love the minivan, doesn't he? And I get it. I mean, y'all got a lot of equipment.
That's right.
And
and nowadays it's the only thing that's usually available. I mean, you go to, like, do you have a 4-wheel drive truck? They never have one. So it's like, do we going to be in the the small Ford Taurus, or are we going to be in the minivan? That's your 2 choices. So you got to go minivan.
Got to go minivan. Yeah. And I know it. that's part of that. And I know y'all over the years have had to go out of your way sometimes to pick up the host from different airports and stuff like that. So there's a lot of coordination that goes on behind the scenes that folks are just watching the show, a 22-minute show with commercials, 30 minutes. They never see it. It's pretty fascinating. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got involved with videography.
Yeah, I went to school, marketing management's kind of the degree, so I'm not really, I guess, taught. I'm self-taught, I guess is the way to say it, on like the editing and the filming side of it. It's just like picking it up. I always enjoyed being outdoors, and then, just kind of getting a job here and there, and then you just kind of work from there who you know, and then, do a good job here, you're going to get another job. And so that kind of just expanded from that. I think probably the thing that gives me an advantage as far as, like you mentioned, filming birds is just that, I've always grown up waterfowl hunting here in Arkansas, and it's just kind of been a passion of mine. So I've it's kind of easy for me to kind of know when a duck's going to commit or what it's going to do. I would say somebody that might be a big game hunter might not, have that instinct of when a bird's going to, dip in or when they're going to fly away or whatever. So I think that gives me a little bit of advantage, the bird side of it. So I think
that's an important point, that the best videographers that I've worked with on the waterfowl side of it, with the exception of our buddy Zach Eshelman, he really picked it up pretty quickly on picking up birds in flight and how to capture it, really to make it entertaining, is the fact that you really, the best of ones that I've worked with have got pretty extensive hunting background, especially waterfowl hunting. And like you said, you're an Arkansas native. I mean, so you were I'm sure a little kid, tagging along with older guys, your dad and such, and chasing birds here in Arkansas, and that gives you a big advantage.
Yes, for sure. That's I don't think it's once you've seen it a couple of times, you kind of know what's going on. But if you've done the fishing or the big game, and then they try to throw you in there and try to film birds, I would say it could be more of a challenge, so to speak, for sure. Because guys picked it up great, but he's got to see it over and over again, kind of see how it works. So I think that's a huge seeing it again and again. Starts being easier, obviously, like anything else. But to throw you out there in the in the woods or something, trying to guess when they're going to pitch in, could probably be a little bit of a challenge, I would say.
I know a lot of what Zach has done is that he's pretty good about figuring out where to position GoPros. To where he's might be focusing on a different area, but he's got that GoPro right there in the decoys, where you get them dropping in, and you still got that shot. So there's all kind of it's changed a lot. I remember. I was a broadcast production major at Mississippi State, and the beta newscasting type gear that was used back in those days. I mean, there was huge cameras that were very heavy that you had to, put on your shoulder basically, or tripods. And there was, it's changed a lot. Tell us about the advancements in technology and how that's really changed how it's done.
Oh, that's, here in like Field Hudnall and Fred Zink, some of those guys talk about the old days when they were, like you mentioned, taking those big, expensive, heavy cameras and setting those up. And then I think even like the cuts and stuff that they used to do on kind of the older show would would be more focused on production side of it, like as far as now we get away with things where we can, easier to edit and easier to know when to shoot and stuff like that. So, and drones, for example, just over the past couple of years, you'd be taking like the Inspire or something that's just huge and a big Pelican. Well, now you can get away with a, 4K, 120, just, state-of-the-art drone. You can put it in a backpack. So I think that's just huge over the past, even my own stuff. I've noticed the way that we've started off with camcorders, and now a lot of times we'll just roll DSLR or something real small, throw that in the backpack. So as far as like traveling, airlines especially, that helps a lot, not having to worry about if your luggage is going to get there or whatever. You can throw all that stuff in a carry-on, and so you got your cameras with you.
That it happened in the past with shows is that the baggage ended up in a different location, and the show was completely shot. There was no gear. Right. I mean, that's a huge advantage, the fact that you can carry on cameras, and they're going to be there when you need them. But,
well, logistics too, like Field Huddle's told me about. They'd show up to the airport, just have like the whole check-in line blocked down because they've got just like Hollywood production stuff coming through, and then try getting all that out to the middle of a cornfield in Saskatchewan or something. I mean, it's just definitely today I would say is easier as far as filming in the field without hands down.
Stay tuned to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, after these messages.
here's one for you. You filmed all kind of different hunts in different locations. As far as what's the most challenging bird to really get on film correctly? Is it divers? It's got to be, I would think.
Yes, that would say if you get out there. I mean, I would say most of my hunts, puddle ducks and stuff like that have been the majority, but we have, like Maine, I mentioned we went out there and trying to get those, buffle heads or stuff like that just scooting across the water because they're tough to pick up in the camera. And then if the lighting's not right, you're trying to work with all that. So, and like, obviously you try to get as tight as you can on a lot of these ducks. It's tough to get tight on like knowing what a diver's going to do. And I'll tell you, me not being a diver hunter, once again, right. That's not something I'm going to have a lot of experience in. So somebody will probably look at my video and be like, man, what was this guy doing? So, I mean, that's just something that goes with. Now, I mean, like, mallards in the trees, I think I know what's going to happen there. But, like, you throw me out in a sea duck situation, I'm probably not the guy you want, telling you how that's going to pan out. So, anyway, I'm at a disadvantage for sure.
Yeah. Hunting some divers on the Texas coast, especially redheads, those jokers are like little fighter jets, right? So, I mean, they'll come bombing out of the sky, and before you know it, they're right there in your decoys in your face. And, we're a mallard where you're working it, and they give you plenty of time, swinging around and, setting up. And it's a heck of a lot easier, I would think. And Canada geese, too. It's got to be pretty easy. They're big birds anyway. And then you're calling to them, and they're not moving nearly as swiftly. Some of my favorite footage since I've been a producer of DUTV that you did was that North Dakota shoot that was in the snow where those Canadas were just right in y'all's face, man. I mean, you got some extremely good close-up shots of those birds. I mean, just hanging right there.
Yeah, I think that was, if I remember right, that was up there at Buck Paradise with Field Hudnall, and that was. No,
this one was. It was last year.
Was it with Fred?
It was with.
Oh, Doug
it was
up
with
there.
Doug.
No, the Drake
guys.
waterfowl guys. Oh yes, that was crazy. Yeah, that was. There was a lot of geese, and it was. A couple of those hunts was like freezing cold. We were glad that the hunts were short because it was pretty much in your face, quick, and we got back and got in the lodge, got warm, and got that camera gear. I mean, like you said, when you start putting cold and camera gear together, it usually doesn't turn out like it should.
Yeah,
so.
I remember watching the weather before that hunt, going, "Wow, it looks like it's going to be lows around zero," but it's like the guy up there on that hunt, Matt Peel, Dirty Bird Outfitters in North Dakota, extremely experienced. And he knew that. In that part of the world, if the conditions got right, they were going to be right in y'all's face. I mean, they were going to be close, and that's how it turned out.
I think everybody before that trip, I know Doug and I specifically were like, man, what are we getting into on this trip? I think we might have even been talking bad about you, being like, what has John got us into on this deal?
You don't have to have faith on me, man.
We didn't have faith. It was like, are we going to be able, not if we're going to see birds or not, it's like, are we going to be able to function while we're out there with these birds? So it ended up, a couple of those days wasn't as bad. Typical, weather forecast wasn't as bad as they said it was going to be, and it. When you get those fronts and that weather all to line up perfect, I mean, magic happens for sure.
Yeah, folks, you check that show out. Like I said, it was on. It was from last year's season, and it's like I said with some of the Drake guys there in North Dakota, and that's December in North Dakota, which the weather can it can go below zero at that point, big time up there. But that area that Matt hunts, that near Lake Sakakawea, those Missouri River headwaters are there, so it keeps that water open, and all those birds that will stay in there, Canada geese and mallards both. I know y'all saw a ton of mallards too.
We were basically targeting the Canada geese when we got up there, but the mallards, I think on the last day we kind of got thrown in on a little afternoon duck hunt, if I remember right. And they were, like you said, they were coming off that open water on that lake to those fields to feed, and it was impressive. It was just hundreds and thousands of mallards coming off that lake. It was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, most people think that it's frozen up there. There can't be any birds left. Well, they're pretty resilient,
right?
I mean, they don't. Mallards in Canada, especially, I call them kind of lazy birds because you got to freeze them out. You got to very French freeze their feet to make them leave. Sometimes, that's why we got to have that weather down here. Up there, big time to have really good hunting in Arkansas, Mississippi, West Tennessee. We need it, but don't often get it lately, man. I just remember the winters being colder when I was a kid. I don't know why. It just seemed like I froze to death every time I went out there when I was like 10, 11 years old.
That may be true, but I remember I think 2 or 3 years ago, it got pretty cold down there in Arkansas because I think we were just trying to find open water there for a little while. So
and now now that I think about it, I was thinking about the very tail end of the season last year. Remember that ice storm hit, and it got down to it was pretty cold. I mean, you get ice and Memphis and stuff mixed together, and man, it just turns into a disaster, and everybody just shuts down. But I remember, I actually took a couple of days off, and I was hunting with my son over near Fair Oaks, Arkansas, and it was cold. And I remember looking at my dog, and he had ice all over him, and but he was out there. He was a champ, man, a young dog, old Buster, man. He's in training right now, so he's getting ready for next year. Well, this year, I losing track of time, Austin, these days, man. It's all running together. Before we know it, DUTV will be filmed again. We're mid-September, it kicks off, in Texas once again.
Yeah, that's what when you were asking me about dates earlier. I was telling you that a lot of this stuff runs together and even last year to bring up the weather. I remember the Kansas trip we did there at the very end. I went on a hunt with a buddy the day before, and we were breaking ice in the Arkansas River Channel, and it was like crazy. And then we get up there to Kansas, and they got a little open water hole, and then magic again. So that's what you're looking for.
Man, that's why I hate to cancel hunts, right, and shoots. This is like, I talked to the guide that it was the day before y'all were going to leave, I believe, and it was cold. But I was like, look, man, did the birds leave, or are they still there and they're just hiding? And he said, oh, they're still here. And I was like, okay. Well, I was looking at it was going to go right back up into the 70s, it looked like. So everything was going to open up. And I said, well, it should be fine. And sure enough, but they were calling me, man. They were worried to death. Everybody gets terrified when the cameras turn on, right? This is not going to work out. Oh no, we don't do this. I'm like, look, this is hunting. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but sometimes it just, like I said, just like magic. The conditions improve, and there you go. It's really an awesome deal.
Yeah, you really never know. The day before can change it one way or the other. And like on that trip going up from Arkansas, you always get excited when you start seeing, migrating waterfowl in the area you're going to be hunting. That always gives you like a little glimmer of hope, because you just never know. You could hit it perfect. And that trip, it ended up working out, like had just enough open water where we get up there and break a little ice off that morning. But then, as long as you keep that water open a little bit and those birds are coming off the fields and stuff, it was, pretty spectacular.
Yeah, that's Kansas. I love Kansas. It's not as a big known waterfowl state as a place like Arkansas or something like that, but Kansas has got, especially for mallards. Kansas has got plenty of them. And geese too. Canada specs. They've got all that. I'm going to switch gears for a second here because, the reason that we're talking here together in beautiful Lake Ouachita, Arkansas is a little DU Nation, folks. Everybody, I know y'all are watching them because it's been doing really well. And we decided, with the success of DU Nation, that we really wanted to do year-round content with it. So that's really expanded it into a really outdoor lifestyle series, right? And so we were south of New Orleans last year, first episode of DUTV that's about to hit in the first week of July. And you brought up spearfishing. And I was like, spearfishing? And I'm like, I had no idea that you were big into it. And they were like, well, man, we really need to do something for that. So we showed up for the DU Nation cameras, folks. Opening day, Arkansas spearfishing season, and I tell you what, it's really a really cool experience. Give us a little insight in how you got involved in that deal.
Yeah, I've got a buddy that actually took me out years and years ago just to kind of introduce me to scuba diving, and kind of started there. And then he was a big spear fisherman. Kind of once I went down there and did it for the first time after I got certified and everything like that on the scuba diving side, I was hooked. So if I had to describe it to somebody, I'm a big bow hunter, and so it's kind of like I would say bow hunting on steroids or something. Once you get down there, you're trying to get in position, using rocks and the terrain to your advantage, and so there's a lot of technique and strategy that I think probably a lot of people don't know about, but and just what I've learned on fishing and how they are under the water and stuff like that. It's been a big something that I've learned a lot over the years.
Probably you're a better fisherman above the water surface. You know what's going on down below. And what to look for from structures. So Lake Ouachita, beautiful place. First time I'd been here. Oh man, it's just I like the way that the state of Arkansas has kept it pretty wild. They've kept it as it's a state park. Am I correct? The entire lake, or is it?
Yeah, the Corps of Engineers pretty much has all the land kind of around the lake. That's kind of kept most of. There's a few little spots and pockets that have homes or marinas and stuff like that, but for the majority, you can't build on the actual shoreline, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, that keeps it like I said, a really clean look to it. You don't have houses all over the place, and which a lot of lakes you've got houses right there on the water everywhere. everywhere, and not so at Washita. And it's a huge lake, 40,000 acres. Very, it's clear. I mean, very clear, very rocky bottom, very rocky shoreline. So that keeps that sediment out of it and keeps it really, really clear water. And that, from what I just gathered being with y'all, that's a huge deal. You got to be able to see what you're doing.
100%. Yeah, a lot of these lakes around here, even the lake that we live further north up here, you could see 5 feet in front of your face if you're under the water, but here the water's really clear. We've got a couple other lakes like Greer's Ferry and stuff and Bull Shoals that you could see pretty good, but this is kind of just where I've always grown up. And then every year we have family camping trips over here, and it's just closer to home, so it makes it easier for me traveling back and forth.
Like I said, similarity bow hunting, right? I mean, you develop strategies, and what's the real key to spotting a fish under the water and getting in a position for a shot?
I would say kind of different fish will have different things. Walleye, the main thing that I see on those is their fins when they're underwater. You kind of see like a little white kind of coming down, and they're kind of lower on obviously closer to the surface of the lake, and so every fish kind of has different little niches, so to speak, too, of how they move and stuff like that. And that's just things that you learn about once you're down there and doing it over and over. Like we were talking about stripers earlier. You caught that big striper off the boat while we were here.
Yeah, folks, I happened to catch a striper off the boat. It was totally by accident. Trust me, I had no idea that was going to happen, and I hooked into a really nice striper off the back of the boat when everybody was getting ready to dive, and it was like that really was a highlight of that first day. But so those different fish much like different areas, right?
Yeah, they have different characteristics on how they act too. Like I would say catfish, for example, are probably a little bit more confident on, like, if you kind of swim up to them, they're not as spooked, I would say. Like striper, for instance, it's probably easier to catch them on top of the water than it is underneath spearing them, because you may get like one shot at them, but once they kind of swim up to you and figure out what's going on, they're out of there. So you just there's a lot of strategy of how you approach different fish, when to take the shot and stuff like that. When I first started, I was rushing my shot a lot. Like I was getting excited, obviously, like anything else when you get down there. And I would say over the years, I've kind of got more confident and being patient. That's the main thing, because you're only going to probably get one shot at just like a deer.
Very similar to bow hunting, right? I mean, boy, you get nervous, you start shaking, and you just get, you just wait for the right shot. A lot of deer are wounded, I'm sure, missed, both because of the same fact. And you say the same thing with fish. I'm sure that it takes a minute to figure out, okay, I need to wait for the right shot to really take it. So, these are pneumatic spear guns you're all using?
Yes. A lot of people, like I mentioned, some people use band guns. I never have. I don't do much saltwater spear fishing, so for us, it's pneumatic.
So if somebody wanted to say, just beginners, like, man, this spearfishing sounds like a great deal. They watch this DU Nation episode and say, I'd really like to get involved. So first steps, I guess, you've got to be certified to be able to dive. Yeah,
unless you're going to, you can always free dive and stuff like that. I've always been on the scuba diving side of it. I kind of like it a little bit better in my opinion. But certified, basic certifications are probably all you're going to need for Lake Washita here. You're probably only going to be, the deepest usually that we are is probably, 35, 40 feet top, maximum on that end. And then it just depends. Different times of the year, you'll be, shallower. Like right now, this early season, we may be 5 to 15. So it's, I wouldn't say nobody should be discouraged on how deep you are, because it's pretty shallow for the most part. So if somebody's just wanting to get into it, they can start off shallow. And like I said, you can start off free diving, come out here and just kind of see if you like it and all that. If you want to get on the diving side of it, obviously basic certification. And then, like I was telling Zach, a lot of this stuff you can get in for fairly cheap. You look online just like anything else, and everything's going to be expensive if you're buying it brand new, top of the line. But a lot of these people, will get into diving for just a couple of years, and you may find a deal on Facebook Marketplace now or something like that somebody may not even taken out of the package, and so you can be in it, for fairly cheap right off the bat. So
yeah, you were telling me that diving is definitely not for everyone. So you maybe you should go down with somebody beforehand and see if you even want to do it. Am I correct?
Yes, no, for sure. You definitely, I would go somebody that, like I said, get certified or go to some of these. They've got these beginner courses that you go, even get in a swimming pool and go down there and see, because a lot of people are, they'll get claustrophobic or stuff like that, and they may not be for them. Like we were talking about, I'm not a big golfer, so this is kind of my, I'd rather be under the water, so I'm probably different than a lot of people out there. So,
well, no, man, I can tell. Like I said, I know from being around you for years that you love to hunt, and this is a real combination of hunting and fishing together.
100%. And that's the thing too, kind of for, Arkansas green timber, you can only hunt it 60 days out of the year. So you got to find you got to find a few other hobbies. So this is, when it's 100 degrees outside, at 35, 40 feet below the lake, it's going to be cool down there. So that's somewhere you can get out, escape the heat. And it's kind of, always want to dive with a buddy. So most of the time it's going to be kind of a social aspect where, you're not talking under the water, but when you come up, you're still going to be able to talk about the fish you saw or whatever it is. So most of the time you're going to have 2 or 3 people diving with you. And so it's pretty fun.
Right. It brings up a good point. Like, why we created the DU Nation series in the first place was the fact that we really wanted to show that what we do on the ground affects, not only waterfowl, but a lot of other species of wildlife and helps people as well. And then just, like you said, you can only hunt birds 60 days a year right here. Well, out west, I don't know what they got like 110.
Yeah, that didn't count.
Down here we got 60. So, so if you live the outdoors lifestyle, you end up doing all kind of other things, fishing and camping, hiking, spearfishing, fly fishing. I mean, it's really, the DU Nation is about the outdoor experience. So we're really trying to showcase that. And I think this is really cool. Something that a lot of folks don't even think about is, they've seen spearfishing in saltwater, but they haven't seen it in fresh.
Yeah, Arkansas, I want to say, don't hold me to it, but I think Utah may be one of the only other states like actual sport fish that you can actually shoot. So a lot of people are always surprised when I mention that, we're shooting different things like walleye and catfish and stuff like that. But it is legal here in Arkansas. And I think, since we've been here, we've seen multiple other people out here spearfishing. It hadn't been too crowded, which, we're thankful for. But it's still, you're getting people in the outdoors. And obviously, the fisheries, the Game and Fish has set these legal parameters. And so, that's just one more way to get outside and have fun. So
exactly. And once again, it needs to be stated that there's a season for this. You can't just roll out any time of year and spearfish. You've got certain parameters. Like it was June 15th, right, as opening day. But and then once again, you can't shoot flathead catfish. You got to wait another month, July 15th, for flatheads, right?
Yes, and so I think ever since I've been doing it, June 15th's been our big day. We're just like opening day of duck season. We're counting on that calendar that day, man, because that's when you want to be out here. And obviously, just like anything else, if you can catch a weekday, there's going to be less people wakeboard and stuff like that, which is going to help visibility. But flatheads here in Arkansas, you got to wait till July 15th. And I saw a couple, like I mentioned to you when I was down there, that we didn't shoot. You can see them. They're obviously, once you're down there over and over, you can just get more fish. Fish identification has been huge for me, just the different types of fish that I've learned since I started diving and stuff. Being old school, I was pretty much catching at least largemouth, maybe smallmouth here and there. And then now just walleye, just the different stripers, hybrids, white bass. Just all that different. You were talking about, a lot of people don't even know that they have in a lot of lakes here in Arkansas. So that's been pretty cool for me.
Very diverse. You don't have to go far. I'm a Mississippi native and live in Mississippi. There's no walleye in Mississippi. That's it. And it's not that far away. We're 4 hours away, really, from, being right there in the Mississippi Delta. And that's something that they have here in these clear lakes in Arkansas that we don't have over there.
Best eating too, as you can tell when we fried all those fish up last night, that you wanted to try to get a piece of that walleye, because that's where it's at.
That's it. Although that striper did provide a lot of meat, though, that I remember. He provided a lot of sustenance, folks. Great experience, folks. This is like I said, DU Nation's really taken us to a lot of different places and a lot of different experiences, and this one was really unique and something we're going to definitely have to come back and explore again, Austin. So thanks, man, so much for hosting us on this deal, and thanks for being part of the DU podcast.
I've always been a fan of Arkansas. I've been trying to get you over here. I always call it the promised land. So
I know we've been in enough places duck hunting together and be like, man, we need to be down here in Arkansas, man. I'm like, I know.
This is I really do love the state of Arkansas. The spearfish is one more way to keep me here for the full year. So I'm glad y'all got to come and see it. And like the scenery, like we mentioned, just getting out here and being able to drive out on that lake and see a sunrise, sunset, you can't beat it. So
just getting out on that lake is worth worth coming here. It really is. Wichita's a beautiful place, and it really is. We saw a lot of folks, families here. I'm sure it's, over the weekend it'll be really jumping.
Yeah, it'll start getting more and more packed as the weekend goes on, and then maybe next year you'll have to get that diving certification, get you down there and get you hooked.
Although the bigger fish are on rod and reel. I don't know. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, folks, hey, once again, thanks again for tuning into the Ducks Unlimited podcast. And thank you so much for supporting the Ducks Unlimited mission of wetlands and waterfowl conservation.
Thank you for listening to the DU Podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit ducks.org/DU Podcast. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.